Well, hey everyone, and welcome into Pushing the Limits. I'm Lisa Tamati, your host, and today I wanted to do a video on a really exciting new essential fatty acid, and it's the first one that's been discovered in over 90 years and has huge implications. And it's an essential nutrient that we must get from our food and whose levels have been declining in our populations over the past few decades. Now, this story has a fascinating background, and I'm talking about C15 or pentadecanoic acid, or as the supplement is called, Fatty15. Now, 75% of people are deficient in this fat, and you think, well, why do I care? Well, we're going to dig into that today. So as a population, due to many factors, we are experiencing more nutritional deficiencies. And this is this one has really major implications. Now, C15 is 3 times more powerful than omega-3, especially when it comes to cellular membrane and protecting the cell. So C15 is a 15 carbon chain fatty acid, and it's been shown to reverse 36 clinically relevant and aging associated changes at the cellular level and protects against age-related breakdown. It improves mitochondrial support, supports membrane fluidity, it's very stable and resistant fat, and unlike omega-3s, it's not prone to oxidation, which is a really key factor. Now, recently, a paper was published on the cellular fragility syndrome, and basically, our cells are armored by a cell membrane, and the cell's membranes are made up of lipids, and these can become weak. And what has been discovered is based that upon the type of fatty acids in the membranes dictates how strong or how weak the cell membranes will be. And why is this important? Well, when our cells are weak, they undergo faster aging. And that's what this channel is all about, slowing aging, right? So we want to know what causes faster aging and what can we do about it. And so when these cells are weak, they undergo faster aging and they fall apart faster and they're fragile. So we age, okay? So over the past 12 or so years, they've researched, different parties around the world have done research, and they've found that if we don't have a certain level of C15 in our membranes, the sturdy, saturated fatty acid, our cell membranes age faster than we should. And this may explain the onset of those aging associated diseases. So things like type 2 diabetes, fatty liver disease, heart disease, and so on. Now, C15 deficiency syndrome may be the cause of the cellular fragility syndrome, but let's back up a little and dive into the backstory a little behind this breakthrough discovery and the people behind it, because it's quite fascinating, and about the Fatty15 story, which is the supplement that you can take. So it started off with 2 wonderful entrepreneurs, actually husband and wife team, a team dedicated to service, and a husband and wife team who have a really unusual set of skills. And I've had the privilege of interviewing these 2 wonderful people, Dr. Stephanie Venn Watson and Dr. Eric Venn Watson. I've interviewed them on Pushing the Limits, my podcast, and I'll put the link into the show notes below, and I will be interviewing them again soon, so stay tuned for updates because there's been more research since the last time. So Dr. Stephanie Venn Watson, she's a veterinary epidemiologist, a public health scientist. She has 40 patents and 70 peer-reviewed scientific publications, 2 decades of leading efforts to understand and improve dolphin health, and that's where it gets interesting, right? And her husband, Dr. Eric Venn Watson, he was a US Navy veteran, 20 plus years as a military physician, and he's led life science companies, supports entrepreneurship programs for the military, and both he and Stephanie have worked on this project. So Stephanie served as an epidemiologist tracking diseases for the Center for Disease Control and Prevention and the World Health Organization, and she co-founded the National Marine Mammal Foundation. And Eric has held multiple leadership roles as a US Navy military physician with combat deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan. And basically what this says is these guys have a long history of working in this area. Now, Stephanie was working, this is over 20 years ago, at the Navy with Navy dolphins. Now, the Navy have these dolphins and they look after them, and these dolphins tend to live a lot longer than dolphins in the wild. But what they discovered was that there was two pods of dolphins. Now, the Californian pod of dolphins had more dolphins with age-related conditions, and the Florida pod that they had fewer aging-related conditions. And those age-related conditions, well, they were things like precursors to diabetes, heart disease, and stroke in humans, fatty liver. And so what was the difference, they asked themselves, between this Florida pod and the California dolphins? And the Florida pod ate different fish than the California pod. So the fish with the higher levels of fatty acid C15, aka fatty 15, when the California pod switched to the fish with the higher levels of the C15, their age-relating conditions stabilized. So these ones had less before, and then when they added in these higher fatty fish, they had a fish population called candlefish that apparently are super high in fat. So that's why they're called candles, because you can literally burn them. They had so much fat in them. And these stocks of these fish were dwindling. And this is when they changed the food out. And this is when they noticed that these age-relating conditions happened. So a really, really interesting backstory. And when they changed the California pod to a higher level of C15 again, their age-relating conditions stabilized and their cells stabilized too. So they asked themselves, could helping to improve the lives of the dolphins also help humans too? And so fatty 15 was born. So the first essential fatty acid discovered since the omegas, so omega-3s and 6s are essential fatty acids. And this is the C15 is the first one in 90 years to be discovered. So it is an essential fatty acid. So C15 is a healthy odd chain, and that's an important point, odd chain saturated fatty acids that our bodies require to maintain physiological health, okay? So C15 is a breakthrough Goldilocks fatty acid. So omega-3s and omega-6s have been recognized as two essential fatty acids, and C15 is now the third. Now let's talk, though, about the differences between the omegas and C15. So omega-3 and omega-6 are polyunsaturated fatty acids that contain multiple double bonds. Now, these double bonds are why omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids are particularly susceptible to oxidation. So while omega-3 fatty acids have had many proposed health benefits, some studies have had mixed outcomes. And this can partly be due, in course, to this oxidation problem. Now, C15, in comparison, it's also called pentadecanoic acid, is an odd chain saturated fatty acid with no double bonds in the main chain. Now, this makes C15 very sturdy and resistant to oxidation. So here's a bit of a summary. So C15 is an essential fatty acid. Essential fatty acids are nutrients that our bodies need to maintain physiological health. And because our bodies don't make enough of these molecules on their own, we must get certain amounts routinely from our diet or our supplements. And there are now 3 known essential fatty acids: alpha-linolenic acid, an omega-3 fatty acid, linoleic acid, an omega-6 fatty acid, and pentadecanoic acid, or C15. Now, human population studies, including large prospective cohorts, consistently show that people who have a higher circulating level of C15 concentrations have a lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, including heart failure, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is hugely on the rise, and NASH, which is the next level when it becomes really dangerous and we end up having to have liver transplants and things like that. So these liver diseases are becoming a huge problem worldwide. Now, food sources. Can you get this in your food? Yes. The primary dietary source of C15 is, however, whole fat dairy. And because most people are avoiding cow's milk for other reasons, because they don't just have C15 in them, they've got other things in them. And over the last few decades, we've sort of demonized saturated fats wrongly, I believe. But we won't go into that conversation today, but we've been avoiding more of the full fat milk from cows. So population-wide, C15 levels have been decreasing. So C15 is available now as a supplement. And based on the pharmacokinetic and activity studies, people should be getting between 100 and 200 milligrams of C15 daily. So C15, as we said, it's an odd chain fatty acid, and it's the first essential acid to be discovered in 90 years. So how does it work? So C15 is a pleiotropic compound with the following demonstrated activities. And here's where it gets a bit scientific, but hang in there. So PPAR alpha delta agonist to regulate metabolism and immune responses, AMPK activator to regulate glucose uptake, and AMPK is talked about a lot in the longevity circles as being something you want to have activated, and then JAK-STAT inhibitor to regulate immune responses, and it's also an HDAC6 inhibitor to repair DNA. So in animal studies, daily oral C15 supplementation for 12 weeks has been shown to safely lower glucose, lower total and LDL cholesterol, lower triglycerides, lower body weight gain on a high-fat diet, and attenuate hemolytic anemia. It lowers pro-inflammatory cytokines, so IL-6, MCP1, and tumor necrosis factor alpha. It lowers severity of NASH-related liver fibrosis. It lowers NASH-related damaging liver iron deposition. And C15 safely lowered clinically relevant biomarkers in human cell systems relevant to the following conditions. So autoimmune diseases, cancer, cardiovascular disease, chronic inflammation, lung and liver fibrosis, as well as osteoarthritis. Now, studies have recently linked C15 to a better longer-term health, including better heart health, metabolic, immune, and liver health. And now let's talk a little bit about the odd versus the even chain of saturated fatty acids. So even chain saturated fatty acids like C16 continue to be associated with increased risks of type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and chronic inflammation. So you might think, what's the difference like C16 to C15? It doesn't sound like much of a difference, but it has major implications in the body. So odd chain saturated fatty acids like C15 are consistently associated with lower risks of type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and fatty liver disease. So what are essential fatty acids? Well, they are nutrients that our body needs to maintain that health. And they're similar to vitamins. This means we need to get adequate amounts of these essential fatty acids in our diet. And a growing body of evidence is really showing that this third discovered essential fatty acid is really worth your time in having a look at. So if we're wanting to restore and repair cellular health, and I think all of us need to be working on that as we get older. So it works at the cellular level to reverse key hallmarks of aging while reducing clinically relevant drivers of chronic disease. So repairing and restoring cellular health. So it's targeting receptors throughout the body, activating that AMPK pathway, which I mentioned. It maintains cellular homeostasis, regulates that glucose metabolism, and that's a major player right now. We have so many metabolically sick people, and is a core component of the human longevity pathway. Now, it activates that PPAR alpha delta receptor that I said before that regulates metabolism. It helps with immunity, mood, appetite, and sleep, as well as that HDAC6 inhibitor. And that reduces the cancer cell proliferation. So it's going to be interesting, some of the research that comes out of the future, because there's more research to be done, obviously. And it inhibits MAPK and JAK-STAT signaling, which reduces inflammation. Now, inflammation is another core factor in aging-related diseases. So it really is reversing multiple drivers of aging and has been shown to improve cellular resilience against premature breakdown, decreases reactive oxygen species and lipid peroxidation, repairs mitochondrial function, and increases ATP production. So many people, again, dealing with dysfunctional mitochondria, not enough energy production. This is something else that can help. And it improves cellular signaling. It slows a key biomarker of aging, which is raised, for example, like raised hemoglobin. So it lowers drivers of chronic disease. It's been shown to lower clinically relevant biomarkers of chronic disease, including lower pro-inflammatory cytokines, including IL-6, the one that pops up a lot in conversations now, because that's one of the aging cytokines that we look at, MCP1, VCAM1, and PAI1. It decreases proliferation of cancer cells, decreases proliferation of fibroblasts to help slow or stop tissue fibrosis, increases glucose uptake by cells, and treats multiple human cell disease systems, mimicking inflammation, cardiovascular disease, liver cirrhosis, and autoimmune diseases, and allergies. And it produces active metabolites. So our bodies use C15 to make a metabolite called pentadecanoyl carnitine, or PDC for short, which has been shown to activate the cannabinoids, the CB1 and CB2 receptors that regulate the mood, the sleep, the inflammation, and the pain. That's really, really fascinating. It activates 5-HT1A and 5-HT1B receptors that help to lower stress. It inhibits H1 and H2 histamine receptors, which helps to treat allergy symptoms. And a strong body of evidence is now showing that C15 promotes cardiometabolic, immune, and liver health, while a key C15 metabolite can support mental and cognitive health. So we're really looking at a broad range of benefits from this one thing, C15. So why C15 is becoming the essential fatty acid. It's available in some of our foods, like I said, in the whole milks, and it's also in some of the oils. But a lot of these peer-reviewed studies demonstrate the active benefits of C15 used only when it's pure. When it's combined with other fatty acids, it may not have the same benefits. So these are not expected from products that contain C15 along with oils or competing pro-inflammatory fatty acids. So you want to get it pure as C15. Okay, let's look at metabolic health. So numerous studies have shown that people with higher circulating levels have lower risk for that type 2 diabetes. And these studies were performed by prestigious research teams around the world, including Sweden, England, Canada, and Asia. So it's not just the Venn Watsons and behind this. There's lots of research labs looking at it. And one study showed that even that pregnant woman with higher circulating C15 concentrations had a lower risk of developing gestational diabetes. And these benefits are likely due to C15's demonstrated ability in animal models to and positive associations in human studies with lower glucose and promoting insulin-stimulated glucose uptake, healthier fasting glucose and glucose tolerance, lower total and LDL cholesterol, lower adipokines, lower triglycerides, supported healthier body weight, activated those PPAR alpha delta receptors, that AMPK, as we said, which regulates cellular homeostasis. And then it's also looking at liver health. Multiple studies have shown that people with higher circulating C15 concentrations have a lower risk of having non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, or NAFLD, and severe non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, including children. Now, NAFLD now affects 1 in 3 people. That's off the scale, and it is going to have huge implications for us in the future and now, and includes 1 in 10 children globally. So our children are starting to get, because of our diet, because of the environment, because of a number of factors, starting to get these age-related conditions in their childhood. And this is very scary. And 1 in 3 children, 1 in 10 children, globally has now got NAFLD. It's been hypothesized that nutritional C15 deficiencies may be driving this global pandemic of fatty liver disease. So C15's liver health benefits may be due to its demonstrated ability in relevant models to positive associations with human epidemiological studies with lower severity of liver fibrosis. It stops fibrotic cells from proliferating, prevents damaging iron deposition in the liver, lowers inflammation, lowers the AST, ALT, and GGT enzymes, activates those PPAR. Immune and joint health is another area that you could look into these studies, and I'm going to link a lot of these studies below in the show notes as well. But people with higher circulating C15 concentrations had lower inflammation. Additionally, a study evaluating the model of arthritis demonstrated that C15 concentrations in the serum and joint fluid was associated with a lower risk of joint degradation and osteoarthritis. So what I want you to know is there are many reasons to be looking at this supplement. One more is heart health, okay? Dozens of large prospective cohort studies have consistently shown that people with higher circulating C15 concentrations are less likely to develop heart disease, including coronary heart disease and myocardial infarction and heart failure. Now, this is probably relevant, demonstrated ability in the relevant models to positive associations with lowering those total cholesterol, the triglycerides, the ApoA1 and the ApoB, lower healthier blood pressures, the PPAR alpha receptors, the PPAR delta receptors, and broad dose-dependent and clinically relevant beneficial activities across multiple primary human cell systems, mimicking cardiovascular disease. It also is thought to have some anti-cancer activities, and I'm always on the lookout for anti-cancer agents. And people with higher circulating C15 levels have a lower risk of having a variety of cancer types, including breast, small lung cell, squamous cell, colorectal, hematological cancers, and C15 has direct anti-cancer activities and phenotypes. When it comes to brain and mood and sleep, C15 and its metabolite beta PDC, we'll go back to that because that's easier to say, can cross the blood-brain barrier and have targeted cell activities that support brain, cognitive, mood, and sleep health. And people with higher circulating C15 concentrations are less likely to have anxiety and distress. So demonstrated C15 and PDC activities include anti-inflammatory activities, including IL-6 and MCP1, which can support brain health. Cell-based activities that closely match bupropion, say that 3 times fast, and raise circulating concentrations of PDC. Okay, so what I want you to put on your radar is this supplement Fatty15. Watch out for the new interview that I will be doing, and make sure that you check out the interview that I've already done with Eric and Stephanie, because it is a really fascinating story and a fascinating insight into what and how this works in the body. And I won't go butchering the science anymore. I'll put all of the studies that I've mentioned, or a lot of the studies that I've mentioned, into the show notes below. And if you want to try out Fatty15 as a product, as a supplement that you can take, and this is just one tiny pill and it's only got C15 in it, it's not got anything else in it, and it's so it's pure C15 basically, then go to fatty15.com and go Lisa T at checkout to get 15% off to try it out. I'm using it, my family's using it, you should try it too.